Have you ever noticed yourself doing things you don't remember choosing? Why your hand reaches for your phone before you even admit you feel lonely? Why you smile in rooms that quietly hurt you, or stay quiet when every part of you wants to speak? It looks like choice, but beneath that belief, something deeper moves, older than logic, quieter than thought, yet far more powerful. It's the hidden system behind your life, the subconscious, the part that keeps breathing when you forget to, that reacts before you can explain why. It records every look, every rejection, every moment of safety or threat. Like a river under ice, it guides you while your conscious mind walks above. Certain it's steering everything. You think you choose who to love, what to fear, and how to live. But many of those choices began long before you could describe them. A pianist's hands move before the mind catches up. A driver arrives home without remembering every turn. The body simply follows a path the deeper mind already knows. This is being human. You are both steering and being carried. You hold the wheel, but something unseen shapes the direction. Researchers say up to 95% of daily behavior is automatic, not driven by awareness, but by stored memories, habits, and emotional patterns buried deep in the brain. It's surprising to realize most of who you are was never consciously selected. It's like walking through a garden you never planted. Every flower a memory, every thorn a fear. You may trim the surface, but the roots sit far below your reach. That is where the subconscious lives, not as an enemy, but as the keeper of everything you felt. It protects what once kept you safe and avoids what once harmed you. It doesn't prioritize happiness or ambition, only survival. So you repeat familiar stories, even when they hurt. You choose people who reflect your past. You avoid opportunities that feel risky even when they could help you grow. The subconscious whispers, better the pain you know than the risk you can't predict. And the conscious mind follows, believing it made a smart decision. Underneath all thought, the subconscious stays vast, ancient, and unfinished. It guards you, but it also shapes you without your permission. You may feel like you're steering the journey, but often you are simply holding the wheel while something deeper navigates. If most of who you are lives in silence, then who really is guiding your life? Before thinking began, feeling was already there. Long before you spoke, the world was writing inside you, not with words, but with tone, expression, and silence. A lingering stare, a sigh of disappointment, a brief smile that felt like safety. Your subconscious witnessed all of it, absorbing, shaping, building the framework of who you would become. Picture a child sitting in a dim room, holding a toy for comfort. The air feels tense not from words, but from what they imply. The mother is sharp today. Her movements are rushed, her attention elsewhere. The child learns without explanation. Love can disappear suddenly. That lesson doesn't leave once the room is calm. It settles deep, finding a lasting place in the subconscious. Years later, that child, now an adult, hesitates to show joy, worried it will be taken away, or becomes overly helpful to keep peace at any cost. Psychologists call this attachment conditioning. A young brain learns to tie love to survival. Neural pathways strengthen through repetition. A loud voice signals danger. A warm touch signals safety. By around age 7, the subconscious has already formed most of its core beliefs, not about the world, but about your place in it. Were you protected? Were you noticed? Did your emotions matter? Every answer created early patterns that still operate beneath your adult mind. A young boy praised only when he is quiet may grow into a man uneasy with his own voice. A girl shown love only when she is flawless may become a woman who confuses fatigue with value. These aren't deliberate choices. They are echoes. The subconscious, focused on keeping you safe, continues repeating what once protected you. It doesn't know time has passed, that you matured, that real dangers faded. To it, you are still that child in a dim room learning love, like weather watching faces for warmth and adjusting yourself to avoid conflict. Philosopher Alan Watts once observed, "We seldom realize that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own." He was right. They were learned through whispers, footsteps in hallways, and how gently or harshly your name was spoken. So many of your adult reactions, hesitation, fear, longing, are simply old lessons replaying. You are shaped by countless invisible teachings, written not in language but in tone and emotion. The subconscious remembers its first language feeling, and it speaks through you still, trying to shield you from threats that no longer exist. But when childhood rules hold an adult in place, a mask begins to form and another chapter of your inner story begins. You may believe you've moved on, outgrown your past, or replaced it with logic, discipline, and goals. Yet beneath that adult identity, something quiet still moves. Your younger self did not vanish. It simply adopted a better disguise. You call it maturity or ambition, but often it's protection in another form. You wear it skillfully. At work, it appears as control, a drive to succeed, and a need to be useful. In relationships, it appears as caution, smiling through discomfort and saying you're okay even when you're overwhelmed. The subconscious doesn't easily trust the world with your truth, because once your truth felt insufficient. So it builds habits as armor. The people pleaser who avoids saying no. The perfectionist who finds comfort in constant effort. The guarded person who keeps distance because trust wants healthies and not false identities. They are unfinished survival responses. Neuroscience suggests most decisions occur before you consciously notice them. The brain, loyal to its past, reactivates childhood wiring. Familiarity feels like safety even if it brings discomfort. So you repeat familiar love patterns, familiar conflicts, familiar feelings of being unseen. Over time, repeated pain can begin to feel like home. You think you're chasing happiness. Your subconscious simply seeks what it recognizes. Imagine yourself guided by golden threads moving gracefully, performing reliably, believing you're free, while old fears and unspoken childhood vows still tug. I will not be a burden. I will not appear weak. I will never need too much. The mask helps you function, succeed, and even earn appreciation. Yet it can also keep you separate from your authentic self. You smile not always from joy, but because once smiling prevented harm. You stay busy not out of passion, but because resting once felt unsafe. This is sometimes called the tragedy of self-forgetting, when who you are becomes shaped more by who you had to be. You seek control because you remember the uncertainty you couldn't manage as a child. But the tighter you hold on, the clearer it becomes. Control can also be fear in disguise. Eventually, there's a quiet moment when the internal tension grows. You feel the pull of those hidden strings. You sense something inside questioning whether this routine is freedom or repetition. That may be the start of awareness, when the puppet senses the hands that guide and asks, what if I'm not the one directing all of this? Soon, you begin to look beneath the surface and see how those old patterns were installed not by fate, but by experience. We often like to believe we are fully conscious, that each thought and decision is deliberate. But research shows a different reality. Your brain acts before you realize it. In experiments, brain signals appear milliseconds before you decide to move your hand, long before you feel the choice occur. The motor cortex fires first, the body preparing to respond before the conscious mind believes it's in charge. Neuroscience calls this pre-conscious processing. Philosophers might describe it as fate written into neural circuits. Your subconscious is not abstract or mystical. It is a functioning system that predates your logical mind. It lives within the brain's oldest regions, the limbic system, where emotion often overrides reason, and the basal ganglia, where repeated behavior becomes habit. These systems don't communicate through language or strategy. They communicate through sensation, impulse, and subtle internal signals about what feels safe or threatening. When you turn away from a stranger's stare or automatically choose a familiar brand of coffee, that is the subconscious working, protecting, repeating, maintaining patterns. Freud compared it to an iceberg, the visible mind small, the hidden forces enormous. Jung expanded this, describing the personal unconscious as a storehouse of forgotten experiences and inherited instincts that echo through dreams and unexpected moments. Modern psychology names it automatic processing, but the foundation remains. What you identify as self is often a network of stored experiences, conditioned responses, sensory traces, and reflexive patterns. Each day, your brain takes in millions of impressions. Only a tiny portion reaches conscious awareness. The rest become a quiet background influence, shaping your relationships, fears, preferences, and loyalties. Yet science still struggles to measure what intuition already senses. There is no technology precise enough to explain why a sigh from your mother may define safety for life, or why the scent of rain can bring back someone you hoped to forget. The subconscious expresses itself in imagery, not formulas, through dreams, slips of speech, and a subtle discomfort when an uncomfortable truth nears awareness. You are both the observer and the subject, trying to understand your inner life, while simultaneously being shaped by it. Knowledge is helpful, but never complete. Learning your subconscious is like trying to chart an ocean while standing at its surface. You may recognize currents and name tides, but without diving in, without feeling its depth, you remain influenced by forces you cannot see. Knowing the subconscious exists is not power. Awareness is power, and awareness begins when the conscious mind stops pretending to command and starts listening. So what happens when the mind hides from itself? When the emotions you avoided begin to surface quietly, reshaping your behavior? You may label it misfortune, self-sabotage, or coincidence, but the cause is usually simpler. It is the return of unprocessed emotion. The subconscious does not erase, it waits. Every unacknowledged fear and buried feeling becomes part of a shadow that follows you, slowly shaping behavior until you finally confront it. You see this in repeated life patterns. Someone continually chooses the same type of partner, different appearance, same emotional outcome. A man fears rejection, yet builds emotional walls so tall no one can reach him. A woman seeks calm, yet feels restless without conflict. These are not random events. They are emotional repetitions, attempts to resolve past wounds by recreating them. Psychology calls this repetition compulsion, the drive to relive pain until its lesson is learned. But the subconscious does not instruct verbally. It communicates through routines, impulses, and emotional crises. Jung labeled this hidden aspect the shadow. The emotions and traits we suppress: anger, envy, need, vulnerability, and anything that contradicts the identity we learn to present. What is pushed away does not disappear. It changes form. It surfaces as subtle hostility, numbness, or sudden reactions that seem out of character. Dreams reflect this too: drowning, being chased, teeth falling out. Symbols of something internal trying to rise to the surface. Neuroscience reflects this idea. Suppressed memories still activate the amygdala, the emotional alarm center. They remain in neural circuits, quiet until something triggers them. That's why a familiar scent, a tone of voice, or a single phrase can unsettle you instantly. You assume you are reacting to now, but you are responding to then. The subconscious does not separate past from present, it only prioritizes survival. So, when you refuse to feel your pain, the pain returns in other forms. Through unexplained anxiety, through relationships that replay your insecurities, through the unsettling sense that you are living variations of the same story. Encountering new faces but familiar outcomes, the subconscious can feel like a forgotten basement. Every thought you hide sits there, waiting until you face it. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What we fear in ourselves isn't evil, it's simply the truth we pushed away. It only becomes harmful when ignored. Confronting that inner shadow takes courage. It means looking into the parts of yourself you tried to avoid. And when you stop running from that darkness, you see it was never a threat, it was asking to be understood. Through that inner journey, you realize even the uncomfortable parts of you are guiding you toward wholeness. Have you ever questioned whether your thoughts are truly your own? The shows you watch, the language you use, the goals you pursue, how much did you choose? And how much did the world quietly place in you? The subconscious does not exist separately. It absorbs the culture around it. Every advertisement, every speech, every viral phrase slips into your mind, shaping your beliefs through repetition. You feel like you're choosing, but often you're repeating what society taught you to desire. From childhood, hidden lessons surround you. Television defined beauty. Religion introduced shame. Language shaped what emotions you could express. Meaning was set for you before you ever defined it for yourself. Research in cognitive science shows the brain seeks patterns it copies and repeats. When society repeats symbols long enough, the cross, the currency sign, the flawless face, they become sacred in the subconscious. They stop being questioned. You grow up chasing not truth, but belonging. Modern marketing understands this deeply. It doesn't sell products, it sells identity. A car becomes status. A brand becomes validation. The subconscious associates emotion with objects until wanting feels like instinct. The mind learns to believe that owning equals peace because it has been trained to. So, you buy not always from desire, but from the belief that wanting proves you exist. And then there are inherited stories, fears passed through generations. Fear of rejection, of standing apart, of challenging authority. These beliefs shape groups into unified movements. Psychology calls this the collective unconscious acquired emotional thread connecting humanity. You see it in politics, religion, culture. People move together, guided by shared emotion more than reason. Belonging feels safer than thinking alone. Isolation feels frightening to the social mind. Language itself creates limits. The words you know determine what you can think, say, and even feel. A culture focused on productivity creates people who feel guilty for resting. A society built on competition trains you to judge your worth through comparison. Gradually, your subconscious gives up freedom to earn acceptance and calls it morality. But genuine awareness doesn't start with rebellion. It begins with recognition. Waking up means noticing the patterns, not fighting them, but seeing them clearly. The influences shaping you were not designed to harm you, they were meant to protect you. In familiar territory. Yet comfort is not the same as freedom. And only when you see the conditioning can you ask the question most systems fear. What if I stopped simply following? There comes a moment when life appears correct on the outside: career, relationships, daily routine, yet something feels off. You wake up and move through the day like an actor who forgot the story. The praise still comes, but it doesn't matter anymore. Under every achievement, there's a quiet voice asking a difficult question. Why does this still feel empty? When you disconnect from your subconscious, you drift from your true self. You continue acting, achieving, and performing, but you no longer feel present in your own life. Achieving, building, and proving, but without real connection to your own emotions. Every success starts to feel empty. Neuroscience calls this emotional dissonance the distance between what you show and what you truly feel. You smile while your nervous system alarms you. You say yes while your body tightens in quiet refusal. This gap slowly becomes a type of inner paralysis. You function, but you stop feeling deeply. You've seen it. The executive checking emails at midnight while his heart races with no clear cause. The woman who keeps choosing the same kind of emotional absence: a voice, a face, a promise that fades again and again. The artist who creates without pause but cannot sit alone with his own work. They share the same wound, a life driven by performance instead of presence. When the subconscious, the quiet keeper of truth, is ignored, the conscious mind tries to take over, filling silence with noise. Psychologists call this fragmentation, the self divided between the part that feels and the part that pretends not to. With time, this split leads to anxiety, burnout, and numbness. The brain, stuck in survival mode, forgets how to rest. You start to mistake tension for passion and exhaustion for meaning. Even love turns into habit: actions without closeness, conversations without depth. The subconscious tries to speak, dreams that hurt, repeated mistakes. Relationships collapsing under familiar patterns. Yet you call it bad luck instead of seeing it as a signal for healing. Late at night, when expectations fade, the illusion breaks. You feel the quiet ache beneath everything, the truth you've avoided by staying busy. You realize you confused stillness with weakness, numbness with strength, and mere survival with peace. This is the cost of disconnection, building a life that impresses others, but leaves the one living it unseen. We label it adulthood, but often it's just coping. We call it maturity, but sometimes it's just fatigue. Somewhere along the way, you stopped seeking wholeness and started seeking approval. You forgot what it means to belong to yourself. But inside that realization is the first spark of awakening. Eventually, fighting your inner world becomes too tiring. You understand the mind you tried to control was never the enemy. It was a neglected part of you, waiting to be acknowledged. The subconscious doesn't respond to force, it responds to attention. Healing begins when you stop demanding change and start listening. You begin small. One morning, you sit in silence. You don't escape into distraction. You allow thoughts to rise strange, scattered, honest. Worries, memories, old emotions surface like dust lifted from the bottom of still water. You breathe and stay present. This is mindfulness, not the polished version in apps, but the raw practice of noticing your inner world without running from it. Neuroscientists show that when you observe thoughts without judgment, the amygdala, the fear center, begins to settle. Awareness itself becomes healing. At night, you dream again. Strange yet familiar images appear. Closed doors, forgotten faces, distant voices calling your name. You write them down, realizing dreams are messages from the subconscious. Psychology calls this integration, bridging the conscious and unconscious. So, your inner world becomes one again. You speak to your younger self, the one who hid anger, the one who mistook fear for obedience. It feels unusual, almost childish, but something softens. A truth you forgot begins to surface. Working with the subconscious isn't about fixing broken parts, it's about hearing what was silenced. You begin new patterns through small, honest practices, not forced positivity, but true statements of possibility. I am allowed to rest. I can be loved without performing. Slowly, they stop sounding foreign. Neural pathways shaped by old survival patterns start to shift through repetition. And emotional safety. Neuroscience reminds us that healing is gradual rewiring, not sudden revelation. And then you realize the goal was never to push into the subconscious, but to open to it. The deeper you go, the lighter you feel. What once felt like drowning begins to feel like returning, coming home to the self beneath the noise. The subconscious stops being a threat and becomes a partner, guiding you toward wholeness. The goal was never to silence the depths, but to hear them clearly enough to rise, not as the version that survived, but as the version that remembers who you are. What if what you've been seeking has been seeing through your eyes all along? The subconscious isn't buried like a secret, it lives in every breath, hesitation, and unexplained choice. It is the ocean beneath your ship, the night sky that reveals the stars. You've tried to control it, analyze it, rise above it, not realizing it is a core part of you. Close your eyes for a moment. Listen beneath your thoughts. That soft rhythm, that ancient presence is memory. Every kindness, every hurt, every quiet moment lives there, moving through the corridors of your mind. Freud called it the unconscious. Jung called it the shadow. Both meant the same thing, the hidden structure of being human. Not good or bad, but deeply mysterious, the mirror of what you forgot. Alan Watts once said, "We are the universe becoming aware of itself." Consciousness folded into form. Meeting your subconscious is not sinking into darkness. It is returning to origin. Dreams, impulses, intuition, they are messages in emotional language. Science can track brain activity and predict choices, but it cannot locate where fear turns into symbol or where love remembers its first form. That space is mystery, where psychology meets the soul. You spent years trying to control life. Avoid pain, stay above what you feared. But control was never the purpose, awareness was. The subconscious does not need to be conquered, only understood. When you stop resisting, you see it clearly. It is a mirror showing not who you pretend to be, but who you really are. Beneath the noise, you realize the mind is not split into light and dark. It moves in cycles like day and night, like tides receding and returning. The deepest truth is that the mind's mystery is not what it hides, but that it keeps trying to become whole. Every thought, emotion, and mistake is the psyche remembering itself. The subconscious isn't your shadow, it's your way home. So, when you feel lost in thought or unsettled by what you don't understand, pause. Don't run. Look inside, gently. What you'll find is not a stranger, but the self that has been waiting for you to return.